On my 50th birthday, while I was blowing out candles on a store-bought cupcake in my empty office, my wife Renata walked in with divorce papers and said the cruelest words I'd ever heard. "You're broke, you're old, you're nothing to me anymore." The cupcake was chocolate, 99 cents from the Shell station down the street. One candle, because they didn't sell the number 5 and 0 separately. I'd sung happy birthday to myself in a whisper, feeling stupid, but doing it anyway because some traditions shouldn't die alone. The wrapper was still on my desk, next to a photo of better days, Renata, our daughter Meredith, and me at Niagara Falls just 2 years ago, all wearing those ridiculous yellow rain ponchos and laughing like we owned the world. "Dennis, are you even listening to me?" Renata's voice cut through my memory like a blade through birthday cake. She stood there in her designer workout clothes, the ones that cost more than my current weekly food budget, her lawyer Dutton beside her like a vulture in a 3-piece suit. She looked beautiful and cold, like winter had taken human form and decided to destroy me personally. "I heard you," I said, my voice steadier than my hands. "Broke old nothing. Got it." "Good. Then you'll sign these without making a scene." She pushed the papers across my desk, right through the chocolate frosting, leaving a brown smear across the words, "Petition for dissolution of marriage." "I'm taking the house, Dennis, the cars, what's left of the business assets, and Meredith wants to live with me full-time. She's embarrassed by you. Her friends ask why her dad went from owning 5 stores to living above a hardware shop. What am I supposed to tell them? The truth? You tell them the truth, I wanted to say, that Dennis Talbot fought a fraudulent lawsuit to protect his reputation and his customers, that he spent everything he had to prove those pipes weren't faulty, and he was right, that he won the case but lost everything else in legal fees, that he did the right thing even when it cost him everything. But I didn't say any of that, because when your 16-year-old daughter won't return your calls and your wife looks at you like you're something stuck to her shoe, being right doesn't matter anymore. "Mr. Talbot," Dutton spoke for the first time, his voice smooth as oil and twice as slippery. "Mrs. Talbot is being quite generous, considering the circumstances. You'll have visitation rights, of course, pending your ability to provide appropriate accommodations." Generous? I looked at the man who'd probably billed more this hour than I'd made all month. "She's taking everything." "She's taking what she's entitled to," Renata corrected, examining her manicured nails like this conversation was boring her. 22 years, Dennis. 22 years I supported your dreams, waited for next year when we'd travel, when you'd work less, when we'd matter more than copper pipes and inventory, spreadsheets. Well, next year never came, did it? My name is Dennis Talbot, and 6 months ago I owned Talbot Plumbing Supply, a chain that started with me, a truck, and a promise to my mentor Frank Ostrowski that I'd make something of myself. My wife Renata used to brag about me at dinner parties, called me her empire builder. Our daughter Meredith used to run into my arms every morning before school, shrieking, "Daddy!" like I was her favorite person in the world. Now, Renata was standing in the office I rented for $300 a month, calling me nothing. Meredith hadn't spoken to me in 3 weeks except to text, "Stop calling me," with a period at the end, like even her punctuation was disappointed in me. "Just sign the papers, Dennis," Renata said, heading for the door. "My lawyer will email you the details. Oh, and happy birthday. I'd say, I hope it's a good one, but we both know those days are behind you now." The door closed with a click that sounded like the end of everything. I sat there, chocolate frosting on legal documents, the photo from Niagara Falls mocking me with its frozen happiness. The joke was on me. I'd fought so hard to save my business reputation that I'd lost everything that actually mattered. But here's the thing about hitting rock bottom on your 50th birthday. You notice things you missed before. Like the old briefcase in the corner covered in dust that my mentor Frank left me when he died in 2009. 14 years it had sat there, unopened, because Frank had said to wait until I needed it most. Looking at those divorce papers, at the frosting-smeared future where I'd become nothing to everyone I loved, I heard Frank's voice in my memory, thick with his Polish accent. "Dennis, my boy, sometimes a man must lose everything to find what was waiting for him all along." She took everything that day. The house where Meredith had taken her first steps, the cars we'd driven to soccer games and family vacations, the business I'd bled for, and the daughter who used to call me her hero. But what I found in that briefcase would prove that Frank Ostrowski had left me something Renata could never take. A second chance, hidden in locker 243 at Union Station, waiting 14 years for the exact moment when a man named Dennis Talbot would finally be broken enough to be rebuilt. Life wasn't always this empty. Just 6 months ago, I was Dennis Talbot, the guy who'd built Talbot Plumbing Supply from a single truck into a chain of 5 stores across Ohio. Every morning, I'd wake up at 5 a.m. in our 4-bedroom colonial in Shaker Heights, kiss Renata on the forehead while she pretended to still be asleep, and head to the original store on Carnegie Avenue. That store was my baby, the first one I'd opened in 2001 with a loan from Frank Ostrowski and more determination than sense. Frank was more than a mentor. He was the father I'd needed when my own dad, Gerald, drank himself to death when I was 19. Frank found me, working at a hardware store, angry at the world and going nowhere fast. "You have good hands," he told me in that thick Polish accent, watching me fix a customer's faucet. "But good hands without good head is just wasted potential. Come work for me. I teach you business." For 5 years, I was Frank's shadow. He owned Ostrowski Industrial Supply, nothing fancy, but he ran it like clockwork. He taught me everything: how to read people, how to negotiate, when to take risks, when to pull back. "Business is like plumbing," he'd say, cigarette dangling from his lips despite his wife Helena begging him to quit. "Everything must flow correct direction, or whole system backs up and makes big mess." When I told Frank I wanted to start my own company, I expected anger. Instead, he handed me a check for $50,000. "Is not loan," he said when I protested, "is investment, in you. You pay me back by becoming success." Renata and I met at my cousin Teresa's wedding in 1999. She was working at First Ohio Bank then, processing loans in a navy blue suit that made her look like she could run the world. During the chicken dance, she leaned over and whispered, "This is the stupidest tradition in American weddings." And I knew I was going to marry her. "I'm nobody special," I warned her on our third date, over coffee at a diner on West 25th Street. "I work for an old Polish guy. I drive a 10-year-old pickup, and my idea of fancy is adding bacon to my burger." "Dennis," she said, reaching across the table to take my hand, "I've dated special. Special is usually code for selfish. You're real, you're kind, and when you talk about your dreams for your business, your eyes light up like Christmas morning. That's worth more than fancy." We got married in 2000, nothing big, just family and close friends in her parents' backyard. Frank gave a toast that made everyone cry, calling me the son God forgot to give me but made sure I'd find anyway. Renata's father, Hugo, a stern Colombian immigrant who ran 3 successful restaurants, pulled me aside later. "You make my daughter cry. I have many places to hide a body," he said, then hugged me and added, "But I think you're going to make her very happy." Meredith came along in 2003, born during a February blizzard that shut down the city. I held her for the first time while snow piled against the hospital windows, this 7-pound miracle with Renata's dark hair and my stubborn chin. "Daddy's here," I whispered, and she grabbed my finger like she'd never let go. Those were the golden years. The business grew steadily. We bought the house in Shaker Heights. Meredith played youth soccer, badly but enthusiastically. Sunday dinners at Hugo and Maria's, where Hugo would complain my Spanish was terrible while loading my plate with more food. My brother Colton would stop by the store to borrow tools he'd never return. My mother, Dottie, would babysit Meredith and fill her head with stories about how Daddy was going to be bigger than Home Depot someday. Frank died in October 2009, lung cancer that moved faster than anyone expected. In the hospital, he pressed his old briefcase into my hands. "When you need most," he wheezed, "you will know. Promise me, Dennis, don't open until then." "Frank, what are you talking about?" "Promise. I promise." He died 2 days later. Helena followed him 6 months after, her heart giving out like it couldn't bear to beat without him. At the funeral, their son Mikhail showed up from California, sniffing around about the will, angry when he learned Frank had left him nothing but a letter explaining why. By 2015, I had 5 stores and 40 employees. Renata had quit the bank to manage our finances. Meredith was becoming a teenager, all eye rolls and slammed doors one minute, crawling into my lap to watch movies the next. We were the American dream in action, the immigrant mentor's protege made good, the whole beautiful cliché of it. I should have seen the cracks forming, the 16-hour days that became 17, then 18. Renata eating dinner alone again, missing Meredith's concerts for inventory emergencies. "Just one more year" became my mantra, my excuse, my slowly tightening noose. Frank had taught me everything about business except when to stop, when to say enough, when to choose family over one more deal, one more store, one more dollar. The lawsuit arrived on a Tuesday in March, delivered by a process server who looked apologetic as he handed me the papers. 12 homeowners in Lakewood were suing Talbot Plumbing Supply for $3.2 million, claiming that imported copper pipes I'd sold had corroded and caused catastrophic water damage to their homes. The photographs were devastating. Collapsed ceilings, ruined hardwood floors, a grand piano destroyed, family photos turned to pulp. "This has to be a mistake," I told Renata that night, spreading the documents across our kitchen table. "I've sold those pipes for 3 years, same manufacturer, same specifications. There's never been a single complaint." "Then fight it," she said, but her voice was tired. "Just fight it quickly, Dennis. We can't afford a long legal battle." Fighting it quickly turned out to be impossible. My lawyer, Ackerman, discovered that the contractor who'd installed all 12 jobs, a man named Wade Jessup, had used the wrong type of flux, causing chemical reactions that accelerated corrosion. But proving it meant depositions, expert witnesses, metallurgical testing, and money hemorrhaging from our accounts like water from those ruined pipes. "How much to settle?" I asked Ackerman after 3 months of legal hell. "They want $2 million. Your insurance will cover half." But I didn't do anything wrong. Those pipes were perfect. Being right costs more than being wrong sometimes, Dennis. Your call. I chose being right. God help me. I chose proving my innocence over everything else. I mortgaged the house without, telling Renata at first, convinced I'd win and refinance before she noticed. I sold the 2 least profitable stores to cover expert witness fees. I liquidated our retirement accounts, promising myself I'd replace every penny with interest. Renata found out about the mortgage when the bank called about a late payment I'd forgotten to make while preparing for depositions. The fight that night shook the house. "You mortgaged our home without telling me?" She was holding the bank statement, her hands trembling. "This house where our daughter lives, where my parents come for Sunday dinner, and you just signed it away." I had to prove we weren't liable. My reputation, the business's reputation. "Your reputation? What about our future? Meredith's college fund? What about the trips we planned, the life we were building?" "Once I win the case," "If you win, Dennis. And even if you do, then what? We're already drowning. Hugo offered to lend us money, did you know that? My 70-year-old father wants to give us his savings because you're too proud to admit you're losing everything." That's when I noticed she'd started going to the gym every day, sometimes twice. "I need stress relief," she explained. But she'd come home talking about Bryce, the trainer who was also a life coach, who had all these ideas about manifesting your best life and not being anchored to sinking ships. My brother Colton tried to warn me. We were at the original store on a Saturday, and he was helping me review inventory to see what else I could liquidate. Renata was at Starbucks with that trainer guy yesterday, he said carefully. They looked pretty cozy. They're friends, Colton. She needs friends right now. I'm barely home. I'm stressed all the time. Dennis, open your eyes. She's got one foot out the door. And Meredith, she's telling people at school that her dad's going bankrupt. Kids are cruel, man. They're making fun of her. I won the lawsuit in September. Complete vindication. The judge ruled that Wade Jessup's improper installation was entirely at fault. The courtroom was almost empty when the verdict was read. Renata wasn't there. She was at a spa weekend with her sister, she said, though her sister posted pictures from home that same weekend. But winning felt exactly like losing. The legal fees totaled $1.4 million. I'd spent everything to protect a reputation that no longer mattered because I had no business left to protect. 3 stores gone, the house heavily mortgaged, retirement accounts drained, and Meredith wouldn't even look at me anymore. My friends call you the plumber who flushed his life away, she told me one night when I tried to help with her homework. They laugh at me, Dad. Brianna's father just bought a boat. Kelsey's family is going to Europe. And my dad? My dad destroyed our whole life to prove a point about some stupid pipes. The morning of my birthday, I'd gone to the bank to try for another loan. The manager, someone I'd done business with for 15 years, couldn't meet my eyes. I'm sorry, Dennis. Your debt-to-income ratio, the existing mortgages, the business losses, there's nothing I can do. I bought that 99-cent cupcake with coins I found in my truck's cup holder. Rock Bottom has a taste, and it's stale chocolate frosting from a gas station. Eaten alone while your wife serves you divorce papers and your daughter pretends you don't exist. After Renata left my office that night, I sat in the dark for hours. The streetlight outside cast shadows across Frank's old briefcase in the corner, the leather surface catching just enough light to remind me it existed. 14 years it had waited, patient as a loyal dog, keeping whatever secret Frank had locked inside. I pulled it onto my desk at 2 a.m., running my fingers across the worn leather. Frank had carried this briefcase every day I knew him, treating it like it contained nuclear codes instead of supply invoices and sandwich wraps. The brass clasps were tarnished but solid, and they opened with a satisfying click that seemed too loud in the empty office. Inside was a single envelope, yellowed and crisp with age. My name was written across it in Frank's shaky handwriting, the letters formed with the careful precision of someone who'd learned English as a second language and never took it for granted. The letter inside was short, written on paper from the Marriott downtown, probably from one of our business trips to Cleveland. Dennis, my boy, if you're reading this, life has knocked you down. Good, the ground is where we learn to stand. When your life falls apart, go to locker 243 at Union Station, Cleveland. The key is taped under the briefcase lining. Trust no one with this. Go alone. Remember what I taught you. Sometimes God closes every door so you'll finally notice the window. Frank. I read it 3 times before the words actually registered. Then I carefully felt along the briefcase's inner lining until my fingers found a small bump near the corner. The tape was old, brittle, but still holding a brass key with 243 etched into its surface. Cleveland was 4 hours away. I had maybe $40 in my wallet and a quarter tank of gas. My truck needed an oil change about 3,000 miles ago, and the check engine light had become a permanent passenger. But Frank had never steered me wrong, not once in all the years I'd known him. I called Colton at 3 a.m. He answered on the 5th ring, his voice thick with sleep and concern. Dennis, what's wrong? Is it Mom? No, nothing like that. I need to borrow your truck, and $200 for gas and tolls. There was a pause. I could hear him sitting up, probably looking at the clock. It's 3 in the morning, brother. I know, I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. Is this about Renata? Because if you're thinking of doing something stupid, it's about Frank, something he left me. I can't explain right now, but I need to get to Cleveland. Another pause, longer this time. Then, "I'll be there in 20 minutes. That's the thing about Colton. He'd borrowed probably $10,000 worth of tools from my stores over the years, never returned a single wrench, but when it mattered, he showed up. He pulled into the parking lot in his F-150, handed me the keys and $250 in cash, and just said, 'Whatever this is, I hope it helps.' The drive to Cleveland gave me too much time to think. I watched the sunrise paint the Ohio farmland gold, and remembered driving this same route with Frank back in 2005, going to meet with suppliers. He'd spent the whole trip telling me about his escape from Poland in 1981, hidden in a shipping container with 6 other people, surviving on bottled water and American candy bars for 5 days. 'America saved my life,' he'd said, watching the fields roll by. Not just because I escaped communism, but because here, nobody care that my English is broken or that I have no fancy education. They care only, can you work? Can you be trusted? Are you man of your word? You have all 3, Dennis, that's why you succeed.' But I hadn't succeeded, had I? I'd lost everything. My wife was disgusted by me. My daughter was embarrassed. My business was gone. I was 50 years old, starting from less than 0. What could possibly be in a locker that would change any of that? Union Station came into view just after 9 a.m. The building was busier than expected, morning commuters rushing through the great hall like they had somewhere important to be. I found the information desk and asked about long-term lockers. Basement level, past the closed restaurant, through the door marked "Authorized Personnel Only," the desk clerk said, barely looking up. "But you need to check in with Eugene first, the storage manager. Office is right before the stairs." Eugene turned out to be a man in his 60s with careful eyes and hands that had seen real work. He studied my key like it might be counterfeit, then pulled out a ledger that looked older than both of us. "Locker 243, he muttered, flipping through pages. "Now, that's interesting. Says here it was paid for in October 2009. 40 years in advance, cash payment. You got ID?" I handed over my license. He looked at it, then at me, then at something in his ledger. "Dennis Talbot," he said slowly. "That's the name on the rental agreement. You're the only person authorized to open it." He stood up, grabbed a massive keyring from the wall. "Follow me. And son, whatever's in there, someone wanted to make damn sure you'd be the only one to find it." Eugene led me through a maze of corridors that seemed forgotten by time. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, and our footsteps echoed off concrete walls painted that industrial green color that exists nowhere in nature. The further we walked, the older everything looked, like we were traveling backward through the station's history. "This section was built in 1931, Eugene said, noticing my expression. "They don't make them like this anymore. These lockers survived the Depression, 2 wars, and decades of Cleveland winters. Whatever your friend stored here, he picked the right spot." Locker 243 stood at the end of a row, slightly larger than the others, with brass fittings that had turned green with age. Eugene inserted his master key first, then nodded for me to use mine. The lock turned with surprising smoothness, like it had been waiting all these years just for this moment. The door swung open and my knees buckled. Eugene grabbed my arm, steadying me against the wall. "You all right, son?" I couldn't answer, couldn't breathe. Inside the locker, neatly arranged like Frank had just placed them there yesterday, were 3 distinct stacks of materials that made no sense and all the sense in the world. The first stack was bearer bonds, the old kind that most people thought didn't exist anymore. A note on top in Frank's handwriting read, "My real savings. The IRS never knew. Now they're yours. Approximately $2.8 million when matured. Take to First Ohio Bank, ask for Walter Kowalski in private banking. He knows they're coming." My hands shook as I picked up one of the bonds. It was real, with intricate designs and serial numbers, dated 1982. There had to be 50 of them, maybe more, each one worth more money than I'd made in the last 5 years combined. The second item was a manila folder thick with legal documents. The label read, Talbot Plumbing Supply. But the incorporation date was 1998, 3 years before I'd started my company. I opened it to find articles of incorporation for a Delaware company with the exact same name as mine, with me listed as the sole owner and Frank as the registered agent. A sticky note on the first page, check the patent filing. I flipped through until I found it. Patent number 6850 WAS 239. Method and system for copper pipe joint reinforcement. The inventor listed was Dennis M. Talbot. The date was 2001. That's impossible, I whispered. I never filed a patent. But I had invented something. Back in 2000, I'd shown Frank a technique I'd developed for reinforcing pipe joints that reduced failure rates by 70%. He'd gotten excited, told me to write it down, even had me demonstrate it for some lawyer friend of his. I'd forgotten about it completely, moved on to building the business. But Frank hadn't forgotten. He'd filed the patent in my name without telling me. A second note. Every major manufacturer uses your method now. Patent infringement settlements waiting at Brennan & Associates law firm. Mr. Brennan expects you. The third item was what broke me completely. A white envelope, newer than the others, with "For Meredith" written on it. Inside was a letter dated 1 week before Frank died. Sweet Meredith, you're only 6 now, but someday you'll read this. Your father is the finest man I've known. Not because he never fails, but because he never quits. When I came to America with nothing, people helped me. I'm helping him because that's what Americans do. We lift each other up. If he ever seems lost, remind him. The measure of a man isn't in never falling, but in how he rises. When you're 18, call this number. My lawyer will have something for your education, but only if you've reconciled with your father first. Love, Grandpa Frank. Behind the letter was a savings bond for $100,000 in Meredith's name, maturable on her 18th birthday. Jesus Christ, Eugene whistled low. Your friend, he really thought of everything. There was more. A small leather journal filled with Frank's thoughts about business, about life, about me. Pages and pages of wisdom written in his careful English, lessons he'd never gotten to teach me in person. One entry from 2008 stood out. Dennis will lose everything someday. All successful men do. When it happens, he'll think he's failed, but failure is just education in disguise. I'm preparing his resurrection before his crucifixion because I know him. He won't ask for help. He'll think he needs to earn it. He already has. At the bottom of the locker was a photograph I'd never seen. Frank as a younger man, standing with another man who looked exactly like him. My son, Mikhail, Frank had written on the back, who chose quick money over slow wisdom. Dennis is the son I wished for, one who builds instead of takes. Eugene helped me carry everything to a pair of document boxes he found. Been working here 37 years, he said as we walked back. Never seen anything like this. Your friend, he must have loved you something fierce. He did, I said, my voice cracking. I just never knew how much. I didn't cash everything immediately. Frank had taught me that patience was the difference between the rich and the wealthy. The rich grab at money like drowning men grab at life preservers. The wealthy move deliberately, strategically, like chess players thinking 6 moves ahead. My first call was to Burton Cromwell, the divorce attorney everyone said was impossible to afford. His retainer was $50,000. I paid it with the first bearer bond I cashed, watching his secretary's eyes widen when I handed her the check. Mr. Talbot, Cromwell said after reviewing my case for an hour, your wife has been planning this divorce for considerably longer than you realize. She's been moving assets, hiding money, and building a case for full custody based on financial instability. But she made mistakes. This trainer, Bryce Hoffman, they purchased a condo together 6 months ago using funds that technically belonged to both of you. The color must have drained from my face because he quickly added, this changes everything. Infidelity, hidden assets, financial manipulation. Suddenly, you're not the only one who looks bad on paper. The patent infringement case was even more straightforward. Thomas Brennan, Frank's lawyer, had been building the case for years, waiting for me to show up. Frank knew you'd never pursue this yourself, Brennan explained, gesturing at boxes of evidence. So he hired me to do the groundwork. Every major plumbing manufacturer in North America has been using your joint reinforcement method without attribution or payment. The settlements I've already negotiated are worth approximately $4.2 million. All they need is your signature. 3 weeks later, my phone rang at 11 p.m. It was Meredith, crying so hard I could barely understand her. "Dad? I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I found emails on Mom's laptop. She's been seeing Bryce for 2 years. She told me you gambled everything away, that you chose the business over us, but Aunt Teresa told me the truth about the lawsuit. You spent everything to protect your reputation, to prove you were honest, and Mom knew. She knew, and she left anyway. Sweetheart, where are you? At Kelsey's house. Can you come get me? Please?" I drove through the rain in Colton's truck, still too broke to fix my own. Meredith ran out before I could even park properly, throwing herself into my arms like she was 6 years old again. "I'm the worst daughter in the world," she sobbed into my shoulder. "You needed me and I abandoned you. On your birthday, Dad, your 50th birthday." "Hey, look at me," I said, lifting her chin. "You're 16. You believed your mom. That's what kids do. There's nothing to forgive." The divorce proceedings took a different turn after Cromwell presented evidence of Renata's hidden assets and 2-year affair. The judge, a woman who'd seen every dirty trick in the book, was not amused by Renata's attempt to claim abandonment while she'd been planning her exit for years. I got shared custody of Meredith, who chose to live with me full-time anyway. Renata got the house but had to buy out my half with the money she'd hidden. I used those funds to restart the business, but differently this time. 1 store, manageable hours, focus on innovation instead of expansion. The patent settlements hit my account on a Tuesday. $4.2 million for an idea I'd sketched on a napkin 24 years ago, that Frank had believed in enough to protect when I'd forgotten it existed. 6 months later, on my 51st birthday, Meredith made me breakfast. Pancakes burned on one side, eggs too runny, bacon somehow both crispy and raw, and it was perfect. "Dad," she said, handing me a card, "I need to tell you something. When I was little, Frank told me you were the son he wished he'd had. I didn't understand what that meant then, but I do now. It means he saw in you what I should have seen, that falling down doesn't make you a failure. Giving up does, and you never gave up." Inside the card was the letter Frank had written her, the one from the locker. She'd already called Brennan about the education fund. "I want to study business," she said, "like you and Grandpa Frank. Today, my office has 2 briefcases. Frank's original, now retired but displayed with honor, and a new one I bought for Meredith's high school graduation. Inside, hers is a key to locker 244 at Union Station, paid up for 40 years, containing her own safety net that she'll hopefully never need. Because that's what real love looks like. Not grand gestures or perfect lives, but quiet preparation for storms you pray never come." Frank knew I'd fall because all people who reach for something fall eventually, but he also knew I'd get up, because that's what he'd taught me to do. Renata still lives with Bryce in that condo. Sometimes I see them at the grocery store, and we nod politely like strangers who once shared a dream that didn't quite work out. She was wrong about me being nothing. But she was also wrong about something else. 50 isn't old, it's just the halfway point when you're building something meant to last. The briefcase saved my life, but not the way you'd think. The money was just money. What saved me was knowing that someone had believed in me enough to plan for my resurrection before I'd even fallen. Frank Ostrowski, a Polish immigrant with broken English and calloused hands, had loved me like a son, and that love was worth more than all the bearer bonds in the world. Sometimes God does close every door, But if you're lucky, really lucky, someone who loves you has already installed a window. You just have to be broken enough to finally look up and see it. If this story touched you, please like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear that falling isn't the end. Comment below about a time someone believed in you when you'd stopped believing in yourself. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories about resilience, redemption, and the unexpected ways life reminds us that we're never truly alone.